G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. Let's talk about energy. Let's talk about clean green energy, and let's talk about the transition towards clean green energy. And let's talk about the current state of the dispute as to whether it's a good idea or a bad idea to get out of fossil fuel energy investments. Once again, 15th of November's New Scientist magazine, this time page 26. And this time we have two opposing points of view. We have the vested interest of the academic who is paid to be a professor of energy engineering at the University of Glasgow. His name is Paul Younger. And we have the divestment point of view of Tim Ratcliffe, who coordinates the divestment campaign for a climate activist group, 350.org, in Europe. Well, he's lost the bloody game already, isn't he? Because 350.org was named after 350 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and we're already over 400 ppm. But I digress. I will leave you regarding the cartoon while I read the 2 points of view. Beginning with Paul Younger, the Professor of Energy Engineering at the University of Glasgow. To have to dissent publicly from the governing body of my own university is excruciating. But I felt compelled to do so last month when I read a self-congratulatory report that the University of Glasgow had decided to withdraw its financial investment in fossil fuels. It was not the divestment per se that riled me. Rather, I am appalled by the mistaken assumptions that underlie this posturing. The divestment movement is premised on the idea that fossil fuels can be abandoned immediately, which assumes that there are alternatives already available on sufficient scale to displacement. Total straw man, that. Whoops. This is simply untrue. We do not yet have viable alternatives at anything close to the scale required for many of the key uses of oil, gas, and coal. For example, they are vital to the production of most food we eat, grown using fertilizers made with fossil fuels, creating lots of erosion and desertification and salination and putting the topsoil at the bottom of the ocean. But we digress again. Plastics and many other synthetic materials, demand for which is soaring, rely on fossil fuels. And we have to meet every demand of the market, otherwise we can't get rich. Oops, digress again. Space heating, which overwhelmingly uses natural gas, is another stumbling block, since there is insufficient plant or animal waste to create the biogas to replace it. Steel production from iron ore requires coke made from coal. Transport fuels are highly reliant on oil, and we have already seen the impact on food prices and ecosystems of a dash for biofuels at a modest scale. Then there's electricity production on demand. Got to have it, we demand it. I digress. For which gas and coal are ideally suited. Means it's easy to do if you don't give a shit about the exhaust gases. The impression given by the divestment lobby is that the ascendancy of alternatives is hindered only by the evil machinations of some climate change denying Dr. Evil in the fossil fuel sector. But the real world is not so simple. In Scotland, households with access to the gas grid have a 1 in 4 chance of being in fuel poverty. In regions off the gas grid, it is a 2 in 3 chance. That's because they cut down all their trees hundreds, if not thousands of years ago to do something else, and therefore they have no firewood. It will not be possible to demonstrate that climate change killed a single person in Glasgow this winter. As long as you don't get any extreme weather-generated storms, old boy. But I can reliably predict that fuel poverty will kill. Fuel poverty will kill if nobody can be bothered sharing the fuel that they've got with the people who haven't got it. We can envisage heat pumps replacing gas-fired central heating, but that presupposes a tripling of electricity production to power the pumps. How can we do that with only weather-dependent sources of generation? Our challenge as scientists is to solve these conundrums, but we can't do so if we simply turn our back on heritage technologies. Surely a wiser use of fossil fuel investments would be to exploit the access they give to company leaders. This would let us encourage the acceleration of renewable technology transfer and insist that fossil fuels be used as efficiently as possible, in the meantime capturing and storing the carbon arising. Okay. As you may have guessed, I disagree strongly with the central assertions of that bloke's point of view. Moving on to Tim Ratcliffe from the Quixotic, perhaps, group350.org. He says, we are at a crucial crossroads. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has reaffirmed that keeping global warming to 2 degrees Celsius is feasible and economically viable if we take immediate steps towards a low-carbon economy. That requires a huge shift in investments. The panel estimates that a $30 billion a year decline in fossil fuel investments is needed, alongside a $147 billion a year increase in low-carbon energy and a $100 billion a year boost for energy efficiency. It's simple maths. We can emit another 565 gigatons of carbon dioxide and stay below a 2 degrees Celsius global warming, bracket, we hope, as long as we haven't already crossed the methane class rate tipping point, close bracket. However, the coal, oil and gas that corporations have in their reserves add up to 2,795 gigatons of CO2. In other words, 80% of their carbon reserves cannot be burned if we are to avert irresistible climate change. Yet they are not only intent on burning the reserves, but they are also spending billions every year to discover and develop more reserves. ExxonMobil and Shell openly dismiss the 2 degrees Celsius target. Simply put, their busyness plan and a livable planet are incompatible. Public institutions that continue to fund this are complicit in wrecking our climate. So if your university invests its spare money in fossil fuel energy, you really are a cosmic global scumbag. The IPCC made it clear that we have the solutions at hand to move to a low-carbon economy. The cost of renewable energy technologies has dropped dramatically and is projected to continue to decline, opening up a huge potential to tackle energy poverty through decentralised, community-owned projects. Oh, but the shareholders of the big energy corporations couldn't make any money out of that. Carbon capture and storage has not been deployed on any large scale and is not economically viable. But the question of whether the world will keep within the remaining carbon budget is not one of technological or economic feasibility. It is all about power. The fossil fuel industry is the most profitable in history. It has lobbied to block action on climate change for years. Every institution that divests weakens its stranglehold over our political process. That is why more and more leading figures, from Archbishop Desmond Tutu to World Bank President Jim Yong Kim to United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, call on institutions to divest. Many have heeded this call. The Rockefeller family, who made their fortune from oil, the World Council of Churches, the British Medical Association, and numerous cities and universities. Divestment from fossil fuels is not only a moral imperative, it is also financially advisable. The International Monetary Fund and the Bank of England are just a few of the voices warning that carbon assets are grossly overvalued and risk becoming stranded assets. Instead of fueling climate change, public institutions have a duty of care to take a long-term stewardship approach to the money they are entrusted with. They have a responsibility to support a just transition to a low-carbon economy. Those are the 2 points of view, not quite polar opposites, because they do have some middle ground. They both agree that global warming is occurring, that climate science is not crap, and that the globe is warming because of anthropogenic carbon emissions to the atmosphere caused by the burning of fossil fuels. But Paul Younger has an entire career spent getting paid to come up with high energy fossil fueled solutions, and that's all that he can see. Tim Ratcliffe just wants his grandchildren to have a fair chance at survival. Personally, I reckon it's time to fish or cut bait, shit or get off the pot. Decide whether you personally want to be part of the problem or part of the solution. The problem is we're burning too much fossil fuel. The solution is do something in your own life to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that you and your lifestyle are farting into the atmosphere. And waving your hands in the air and making boo-hoo sob noises because you can't think of how to make quite as much profit by doing anything differently to the way you've always done it, it just doesn't cut the mustard. It's not an ethically or morally valid point of view. You might as well just go around with a claw hammer and poke holes in the skulls of your own children and grandchildren as try and get them to believe that you're doing a good thing by catering to your own personal whims and wants and desires and selfish predilection to have a convenient life now at the cost of them not having a viable planet to live on. To the global warming denialists out there, wake up to yourselves, please. Warble's on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.